All right, during this same time that Florida was getting its statehood, things were going on in Texas, that events were in place that was going to bring Texas to United States as a state. And understand, as you will remember from Texas history, we're not talking about just the shape of the state of Texas, but a large chunk of land that included more than just the area of the state of Texas. Because during this time, Mexico was one of the many, many countries that had rebelled against Spain and had won independence from Spain. And the population of the people that lived in Texas was a variety of people. It was really, honestly, mostly Native Americans still, because if you remember correctly, the Spanish had a terrible time trying to convince their own people to come and move into the area that was Texas. Most Spanish people wanted to live closer to Mexico City because that's where it was all going on. It was the New York, honestly, it was the New York of North America for a very, very long time. And so no one wanted to go live, in Texas. It was not a good place to be. The Native Americans there were not that friendly. And it was just far away, very, very far away. So there were some Tejanos that lived in um, Texas. Those are Texans of Mexican descent, and some Native Americans, but not that many Tejanos. People from the U.S. would come to Mexico if they agreed to work the land and become Mexican citizens. And that's what they had to do. And Stephen F. Austin brought the old 300, the first 300 families to settle in Texas. And they, again, pay attention to this part. If you missed it last year, I used to teach Texas history for a long time. These people had to agree to become Mexican citizens, and they had to agree to be a lot of things. They had to become Catholic, they had to speak Spanish, they had to do a lot of things. It wasn't just come here and live. They had to have a farm, work the land, become Spanish Mexican citizens, and do the whole thing. All right. At first, Mexico's happy to have these people because, like I said, they cannot convince their own um, Mexican people, Spanish people of Mexican people of Spanish descent to go and live in the area, and they want European people to go live there because they know that will help. I don't want to say it this way, but that's going to help control the Native Americans. The more European people they can get to live there, the more control they're going to get. They try the mission system, and that hadn't worked. So they know they need to get more European people to live there, and so this is a good solution at first. Except pretty soon, the American settlers outnumber the Tejanos 6-1, and this sets up a very bad situation because these American people bring their slaves with them, and this is another thing that you need to understand. The Mexicans and the Spanish before them had never been in agreement with slavery. They had never owned slaves. They had never been in agreement with it. So they really didn't like it. They sort of turned a blind eye to it at first, but then after it got to be so many people, they really began to start becoming unsettled about it. So what happened was they issued a decree, the law of April 6th, if you remember it's called, and it closes the border down and doesn't allow any further immigration, which is a problem. It was a problem like for some of the families, especially some of these people had come there thinking that they were going to go start the farm up and then send for the rest of their family to come with them, which now can't happen at all. So the Americans that were there were very unhappy about this thing. All right, so the violence soon erupts, as you well know, and American settlers banded together behind people like Austin and Sam Houston. And these two people, to their credit, Austin and Houston, attempt to compromise and achieve peace with the Mexican government, but it's unsuccessful for a variety of reasons. Some of it's just accidental, but for other reasons it's not. And a lot of Texans and some Tejanos, Texans, Americans, and Tejanos, began to start thinking about breaking away completely from Mexico and creating their own new government. So by 1835, tensions mount, and we get the Mexican War. Not the Mexican-American War. It should have said the Texas Independence War. And Santa Anna himself, who is the emperor, the dictator of Mexico. You should call him the president, but he's not really. He's more than that. He himself makes the mistake of leading his own troops into battle, which, as you can imagine, is a mistake, because just like we would not expect our president to go riding on a tank in battle, you don't want to send your president into battle. So our rebels, the rebels in Texas, have managed to take over the city of San Antonio, and that enraged Santa Anna. And then he gets there, and you get the Battle of the Alamo. All right, and you all know how that turns out. Not very well for the rebels, but eventually, Remember the Alamo cry becomes a battle cry. And I'm sorry about my little talking boxes covering up some of this, but you all know how this plays out. So we have about 180 soldiers inside the Alamo to confront, thousands of Santa Anna's well-trained army. And we've got people like Crockett and Travis and Bowie, who I don't know will be on the STAR test, but it's possible. But they're certainly going to be tested here in your classroom in Texas. And they held them off for 13 days. But on March 6th, they finally collapsed, and the Mexican army climbed up on the ramparts around the edge of the Alamo and turned the cannons and the guns down on the people inside the Alamo and killed every one of them to the last man, leaving only the women and children to run away, in order to spread fear among all of the people living around in the area so that they would run away, which gave us Runaway Scrape. But now I'm getting back into Texas history. Sorry. All right. The Texans use this as a battle cry. Remember the Alamo. All right. What happened was, and this again is, as I told you earlier, we were talking about how people who had fought earlier with Jackson, Houston had fought with Andrew Jackson, and how Jackson had backed the Creek Indians up against the Horseshoe Bend. And Houston finds himself at the same sort of situation with the Mexican army backed up against a swamp. And he is able to catch them off guard completely. And Santa Anna is with them. And he's able to catch them off guard and defeats them pretty quickly. And since Santa Anna is there and is defeated, he signs a treaty and recognizes Texas independence in 1836, May 14th, 1836. So, and this is at Brazos. I'm sorry. San Jacinto, Battle of San Jacinto. Sorry. Okay, so Texas declares its independence. Yay, we are an independent republic of Texas. All right, and this is what I'm giving you. Victory at San Jacinto. All right, if Santa Anna had not been with these men there, if he had not been captured the next day trying to run away disguised as a common soldier, it is likely that the war would have gone on. But he thought he was invincible and thought that he could be part of this fight. It was a mistake on his part. All right. So Sam Houston is elected the first president of the Texas Republic, and Mirabeau Lamar serves as his vice president, and then later on Lamar is president. And immediately, Sam Houston sends a request for Texas statehood off to Washington, D.C. to President Andrew Jackson, who refused the request. Well, the fourth bullet point is important here. Jackson refused the request because it would be an addition of another slave state. And there's other things too. If the United States had taken Texas as a state, that would have meant they would have had a lot of debt to take on for Texas, and also would have angered Mexico. And Mexico, even though they have just defeated, Texas has just defeated the Mexican army, the United States doesn't need a fight with Mexico right now. They've got a formidable army, and the United States does not need that right now. So there's a lot of reasons that they don't need Texas as a state. They would also have to take on the Native American population problem as far as Texas is concerned. So Jackson's like, no, we don't think we need you just yet. Not yet. So Texas becomes a state later on. It takes a while, but and I told you polk is going to become important. I'm not going to go through every bullet point on this frame because it's long. You can read it for yourself. John Tyler becomes president in 1841, and he supports Texas annexation, but Congress remains divided because it's about the slavery issue, and they fail to ratify the Texas um, application for statehood. But Texas keeps on trying, and with Polk's election and the concept of manifest destiny being put into policy, Polk is determined that this is going to happen. And so when he becomes president is when Texas becomes part of the country, because Polk has run on this. It is similar to the idea of, I'm going to take, because this is simple for you to understand, the example of President Obama and healthcare. People had had this concept of healthcare for everyone for generations. President Obama ran on this when he ran for president in 2008, that he was going to make healthcare into policy, and he did. And so it's a difference between making something a thought and making something a reality, and that's what Polk did. He made something, manifest destiny was a thought, and he said, no, I will make this thing a reality if I become president, and he did. And accepting Texas as part of the country was a big part of that.